What do you think of critics who go out of their way to bash movies? Is that being brutally honest and people just tell it like it is, or is there an element of wanting to wound somebody?
It depends on the person. I feel like there's certain critics who literally have an out for certain filmmakers, certain producers, certain actors, that no matter what they do, they won't give them like an inch. It's just like, oh, this guy, you always hear the expression, white man keeps falling upward, and I mean, the industry is very guilty of that, right? Like there's a lot of white men in this industry who have made some really shitty movies that just keep getting to make shitty movies. And I think it's okay to call people out if they kind of proven themselves time and time again. Like if you're going like past a 3 or 4 time and you're like still making something that's not good, and we kind of have this, universal decision that like this is not a good movie and you're not a good director, maybe it's time to push that person aside and give someone else. But I do feel like a good actor could meet a good director and it could be a game changer. Someone who like has been bad as an actor could have a great script with a great filmmaker and they could turn that person into a star. I mean, there's so many people like within comedy. I really don't like the way that comedy has become over the last like decade, where everything's kind of like over sexualized and it's gross out humor and like shitting in buckets and farting and all this stuff, like all these like kids playing with dildos, all this like really like grotesque, like infantile stuff. And, people have been embracing it because like, oh, now it's females doing it. Isn't it funny because it's a female shitting in a bucket? It's like, nah, it wasn't funny when the guy was doing it. It's definitely not funny when the woman's doing it. Like, no, it doesn't work. But you get to see certain actors like evolve. And I mean, great examples for me are a lot of comedic actors, right? You can take an Adam Sandler or you can take a Jim Carrey. And I'm going to go use those two because those are people who I grew up with. And I love Jim Carrey. But watching Jim Carrey, like there's a bunch of people who hated Jim Carrey and his brand of humor, right? So they're seeing all his movies. They see Ace Ventura. Oh, this is stupid. Dumb and Dumber, such stupid stuff. And then you get to see him in Truman Show. And you get to see a different side of him. And it changes everything. Your perspective of Jim Carrey has changed. And you see this whole different side. So flash forward to like recent years, seeing people like Seth Rogen move away from kind of the knocked up thing to do like more serious dramas or roles that are comedic but are more mature. Jonah Hill, like watching him kind of like in a Superbad and then seeing him in like Wolf of Wall Street or Moneyball. I couldn't stand Jonah Hill in those movies like Superbad and oh my God, what's the other one? Like The Sitter, all those movies where he was doing all those comedies. And then he's in Moneyball. And I'm like, who's this guy? Like, why is he so good? And then Wolf of Wall Street. You got to find it very interesting. You got to give people chances. And you're not always going to be a fan, and you may never be a fan of that person. But in the right hands, an actor who you think might be mediocre or not good can transcend everything you ever thought of that person. You might fall in love with them. So when it comes to critics, I think it's really hard because I do think that people feel a very strong vendetta towards certain filmmakers or certain actors, and they kind of want to poo-poo them. Like they always want them to fail. And I'm not saying that that's a big portion of them, but there are definitely people who like, oh, you really, really hate this person. And every time you see them, like we know point blank that this is going to be a negative review. And I think that's problematic because as I said, in film criticism, the most important thing to be is subjective and open-minded. You need to go into anything. If a trailer looks bad, if everything looks like it's going to be terrible, you can go in that movie and it might surprise you, and you have to admit that you're wrong. And if you like something that other people don't like, you can also admit that and not be afraid of it, because a lot of people are afraid of not agreeing with the general consensus.
What should matter more to a film critic, being popular or being right?
Probably every video that people are going to watch is like, depends on who you ask. To me, I don't know. I don't really like that question, because it shouldn't be right and it shouldn't be about popularity. It should be about how that movie worked for you and why. Why did that movie work? Why is that a good movie? And explaining why you think that's a good movie. To me, there should be no popularity in film criticism. Like, you shouldn't, and that's a problem in itself, and a tangent that I can go on about how the industry picks 20 people to see stuff always first. And every time they see something, it's either going to be a glowing review or they won't tweet. And to me, it's so problematic. And everyone calls them out and everyone knows. And they work for outlets that get all the access in the world. And they can't publicly say it. They know it. It's because what people will not tell you about criticism is that when you work for a company, that the foundation of your job is built on selling this stuff, you saying something bad about it, and if it's your job to do the junket right afterwards and sit down with the talent is not going to sit down with you if you say something is bad, or you really hammer a movie, or you really go in on it. They're not. And this is something that I don't know why everyone is so afraid of. So unless you're separating the person doing the interview from the person who's doing the review, there is unfortunately a bias that is created that you can either own up and say, you know what, I did not like this, so I'm not going to say anything because I know I have the junket. Or you just kind of have to like pass the buck and be like, you know what, I feel really strongly about this. I really don't like this. So I'm going to have to like say my piece. And then if it costs me this, it cost me this. But there's a financial thing. And I don't mean to throw any outlet underneath the bus, but like when you look at trades, whether it's Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, or you look at something like Fandango, is the person who works at Fandango going to screen a movie and come out of it and say, oh, that was terrible? As the initial reaction of like when he's one of the first people to see it, when he works for a site whose job it is to sell tickets. And so many people in this industry are struggling that they rely on such dual jobs of like not just doing criticism anymore, but also like pitching a story, to do a write-up of like the behind the scenes of this movie, that they can't say things because if the publicist, the personal publicist, the studio publicist sees this, they have the potential of losing it. People want to be moderators. The people who want to be moderators get paid good money to moderate a panel. Do you think that person is going to get the job if they don't like the movie? No. So there's so many different layers to everything now. And I think it's exposed more because of all of the stuff that we see, right? Because of the social media and all this stuff. And you just kind of see the same names. Like when we were growing up, when I was growing up and I saw a name on a trailer, right? It didn't think to me like, why is that same person being quoted all the time? Like it was like always the same couple people. And now it's the same thing where it's the same names, you know? So like you almost after a while, you kind of understand like there's people that they can go to who can kind of say, hey, we need a quote. Give us a quote. So there's just so many aspects of this industry that are very difficult. But when it comes to being popular versus being right, I mean, I don't think they have any place in criticism, because you're right in your opinion. Your opinion is right. No one should be able to change that. If you like something, you like something. As long as you can explain why you like something, that's right to who you are as a person. And to be popular, I don't know. Like, again, it's a weird fandom thing. Like, film critics have their own fandom. Like, it's weird now. Like, right? Like, when we were growing up, there was the greats, right? We had Leonard Maltin. We had Siskel and Ebert. And there was a couple other people. And they were just about a very small group because they were kind of ones that like everyone knew of. They had TV shows or whatever. And you were very familiar. But like now there's so many, and it's like social media, like the guy who runs, I don't know, I'm not trying to like narrow and point things out, but like the guy who runs comicbook.com, like, oh my God, I love that guy. It's like the guy runs comicbook.com. Like his job is to like talk about comic book movies. And when that same guy who's going to go see Black Adam and he's going to talk to Dwayne Johnson, he's not going to be able to come out of Black Adam and be like, oh man, that movie sucked. Like, what am I doing? Like, what a waste of my time. Because he knows 2 days later, he's going to be sitting down with Dwayne Johnson talking about it because that's the next piece of article that's going on there. And the trades are even worse because of the fact that their whole business is selling ads and revenues and telling stories. So my eyes have been opened and I have forever changed the way I look at all of this moving out here. I never knew any of this until I moved out here 8 years ago. And that really changed how I view a lot of this stuff. And it's very hard because I try very hard to be a genuine person and I like what I like and I don't feel bad about what I like and stuff I don't like. It's very hard because you are often criticized if you go too hard on something. And it's just, again, it's my personal feeling. So, but I don't go out of the way. There's a difference between people who go out of their way to slam something over and over and over and over again. If someone else likes it, enjoy it. That's fine. I just want my peace. And if someone asks me about it, I'm going to make my my anger or my love of something very well known.
So fairness in the criticism versus just trying to just constantly bring, like thinking it's your right to bring someone down. Because there is that angle online as well. And so going back to, let's say, you talked about Jonah Hill. Maybe you weren't the exact fan of him in comedic roles, but then when you saw him in two more serious roles, you're like, you know what? I like this guy. And it's, did you go out of your way to slam him? I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't. I mean, I think it's like, again, it's the level of which you go for it, right? You can be very vocal about you don't like a director, you don't like an actor, you don't like a pop star, you don't like a sports figure, you don't like whatever. But there's a point, there's a crossroads, right? When you're going out of your way, like, and this is what we were talking about with trolls. When you go out of your way to start seeking people and like tearing them down, and like there are people who I know who, if they don't like something, they will go on everyone's posts, social media, Facebook, Instagram, and be like, you're wrong. You suck. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. You're the worst critic ever. You're the worst, what does this take? Blah, blah, blah. You were bought by Marvel. You were bought by DC. You were bought by Star Wars. You were bought by Disney. Whatever. That's where you cross the line, right? You can just say, man, I totally saw this differently. And I think it's something about, there's a fine line. Like you can be, movies have this strange way, and I think it's all entertainment, has a strange way of connecting with people. When you see a good movie and it connects with you, you want to get up, you want to cheer, you want to celebrate it, you want to tell all your friends to see it. You probably, us weird people who get obsessed with these things, you don't want to stop talking about it. You just want to keep championing it. I mean, I go back to my Coda example. Like, I saw that movie at Sundance on a virtual screening. Like, as soon as I was able to see it in a theater, I saw it in a theater. And then I went to multiple press events for it, whether I was moderating it or part of it or not. I went back and I saw it, and because I wanted to support the movie. And like, if people are like, "Oh, you're being such a shill," it's like, no. If I was doing this for every Apple release or every Disney release or every DC release, then I would be a shill. But because I'm literally picking something that resonated with me, that I love and I want to champion, there's a difference. And that's what people don't seem to get. You can like something that a company puts out and hate the next thing. And I always use this as a great example because I did not like Tragedy of Macbeth. And that was the other movie that Apple was pushing with Coda. And they tried to get me to see that movie again. And I told the reps, I will not watch that movie again. And they were like, come on, Denzel Washington. And I'm like, if I'm going to meet Denzel Washington for the first time, I want it to be a movie where I can walk up to him and be like, Denzel, you're amazing, and this movie's amazing. Not like, you're amazing, but like, can we talk about Training Day or something else? Because I don't want to talk about this.